We'll now hear from a member of our faculty selected by the graduating class to address all of us today, Vice Dean and Professor of Law, Barbara Holden-Smith. Professor Holden-Smith joined the Cornell Law School faculty in 1990. She's recognized for her groundbreaking work in Supreme Court history and practice, and currently teaches conflicts of laws and, wait for it, civil procedure. After her graduation from the University of Chicago Law School, she spent a year in an Illinois law firm and then entered a clerkship with the Honorable Anne C. Williams, who's now a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit. Professor Holden-Smith then joined the Washington, D.C. law firm of Arnold & Porter, where she worked for 3 years in litigation, antitrust, and food and drug law, and then she joined our faculty. For the past several years, she has served as the law school's vice dean. In my 2 years as dean, she's been an invaluable advisor, and for much longer than that, she's been a treasured friend. Please join me in welcoming Barbara Holden-Smith.
Good afternoon. My heartfelt greetings and congratulations to the law school class of 2016. Whether you are receiving your JD degree, your LLM degree, or your SJD degree, your family and friends are rightly proud of each and every one of you. I know it has not been easy. I'm sure the time you have spent here has been a time of growth and change. Perhaps for some of you, the change has been profound. For those of you receiving your first law degree, you have been initiated into a new culture, the culture of law. At times, the process must have seemed overwhelming, and you may have often wondered whether you made the right decision in coming to law school. Those moments likely required of you a degree of stamina and commitment that you did not know that you had. But your hard work and perseverance have now paid off, and so now you sit here today, about to walk across the stage and shake the dean's hand and receive congratulations for a job well done. If we on the faculty have done our jobs well, you leave here with a wonderful gift, the gift of a disciplined mind. And soon, some of you will be using that gift in service of others. Let me apologize a bit to the LLM students. I'm afraid that most of my remarks may have more meaning for the JD students than for some of you. I did not get to meet all of you in the course of this year, but I hope that you know that your presence in the law school has enriched the environment for each of us, and you have served as a daily important reminder of just how interconnected our world has become. Class of 2016, I must confess that I am somewhat surprised to find myself standing here addressing you today. I did not think that many students would want to hear again the voice that nagged them with queries and commands such as, "Why? Can you explain that? Can you be more specific?" As they struggle with answers to questions such as, "Well, what was Ms. Sibach's dilemma?" That students might not want to think about the fact that they are still not sure of the constitutional basis of Erie versus Tompkins. They don't want to be reminded that they haven't the slightest idea of why Pennoyer's 3 categories still matter. But despite or because of our civil procedure battles, you have asked me to speak to you today, and I am deeply honored that you have done so. You are about to become lawyers. Does this mean that you have a special obligation to make society better? Some would answer no, that lawyers have no more of an obligation than do other educated citizens. Indeed, a time-honored argument is that a lawyer's role is only to advance the interests of her client, even if those interests are harmful to the interests of others, even if they are harmful to society in general. However, others might say that the skills, talents, and power we possess as lawyers are most importantly used in service of making our society better. Indeed, the society entrusts many of its most difficult, intractable problems to the law and to lawyers. That is in part why our society is so litigious. What are some of the problems that will continuously require the talents of dedicated lawyers? There are far too many of them, but I will mention just a few that matter greatly to me. The most obvious place to start is with the problem of racial injustice. Obvious for me because I am standing here today in part because of the sacrifices and brilliance of lawyers such as Thurgood Marshall, Constance Baker Motley, and Charles Hamilton Houston. Some of the lawyers who charted and carried out the strategy to end racial segregation, with their work culminating in that historic victory on May 17, 1954, when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of the black school children in Brown versus the Board of Education. So this Tuesday marks the 62nd anniversary of the Brown decision. 62 years ago, more than half a century has passed. That may seem like a long time ago, especially to those of you who were born much later than that. And perhaps it is a long time ago. Certainly much has changed since then. We even have an African-American president, something that up until the day of his election, I never believed I'd live to see. Then 4 years later, America did it again. They elected him yet again. Truly amazing. But despite the many positive changes in our society, the fight for racial justice is far from over. The rise of the Black Lives Matter movement among young people is a result of the pain of continued police abuse and the mass incarceration that has destroyed the lives of too many of our fellow citizens in the Black community. What is our role as members of the legal profession in changing our criminal justice system? What will be your role? Rachel Carson began the modern environmental movement with her book, Silent Spring, nearly 50 years ago. Since then, many lawyers have contributed to the environmental struggle. But things continue to get worse. We in the United States constitute only 5% of the world's people, yet we consume 1/3 of the world's resources. In the process of that consumption, we contribute mightily to the poisoning of the air, the shrinking of the rainforests, and the depleting of the ozone layer. And now other countries, large and small, have joined us in this destructive consumption. Because of how we have chosen to live as human beings, the very existence of the planet is threatened. Do lawyers have a role to play in changing humanity's relationship to nature and to ensuring that we become better stewards of the earth before it is too late? In the 1960s, Lyndon Johnson gave us his Great Society programs, which envisioned ending hunger in America. Inspired by the efforts of President Johnson and others, many devoted lawyers toiled hard through the courts to bring about a measure of economic justice to the poor. But that welfare system is gone now. And yet the marketplace has failed to solve the problem of poverty in America. Indeed, economic inequality continues to grow and may prove to be one of the greatest threats to our democracy. How should lawyers respond to this threat? We are a nation composed primarily of people whose ancestors came from someplace else. Even so, today we hear all manner of mean-spirited, hateful rhetoric being directed against the nation's newest immigrant groups. When I was clerking for a federal judge in Chicago, I had the privilege of assisting the judge as she presided over a mass swearing-in ceremony for new citizens. This was one of the most rewarding parts of her job, she told me. I soon saw why. There they were, some 300 people taking the oath of citizenship that day. I could not believe the overwhelming feeling of joy and pride I felt as I looked out at those faces of new Americans who seemed to represent every corner of the earth. We should celebrate and embrace this diversity, for much of our strength as a nation comes from it. But it seems that whenever the pie appears to shrink, immigrants are the first to be sent from the table. We can do better. The problem of how to share the pie must not be solved by denying those who are the newest among us their portion. Shouldn't lawyers be at the forefront of ensuring that the rights of immigrants are protected and respected? There are other persistent problems in our society today that can perhaps be solved with the help of law and lawyers. Problems such as inadequate health care, corruption in government, public schools that are failing, the fact that the United States is the only Western democracy that still puts its own citizens to death as a punishment for crime. I believe that we must solve these problems because we can. We are the richest nation in the history of the world, and we have the collective talents forged by cultures from all over the globe to do so. I believe we must solve these problems because it is right and it is just. The ideals upon which our country was founded, ideals later redefined after the Civil War, demand that we do. I believe we will solve these problems because I have faith in America. That faith comes from many sources, one of which is you, the young, the members of the millennial generation, which I think may prove to be the greatest generation so far. If you believe, my friends, that the solutions of the past don't work, it is your responsibility to find new solutions for the future. It is my hope that the training you have received here at Cornell Law School has helped either to reinforce or to instill in you that sense of responsibility. In my brief remarks, I have talked of some serious matters about which all of us need to be concerned. But let today be a happy day, filled with joy. You have earned it. As you leave us, my very best wishes will follow you. Thank you, and congratulations.